Federal Bank has, I think, leapt onto a very impressive bandwagon here. The MD was just telling me that, in fact, this is the third company, I think, coming out of your launch pad with 7 or 8 more in the pipeline. And the fact that there is not only so much interest in startups, but growing faith in their potential to solve real problems facing Indians is no surprise to me. In fact, for India is increasingly becoming an entrepreneurship-driven economy that looks towards innovation as the path to the future, where answers are being found through fresh ideas and fresh thinking. Startups have, I think, increasingly permeated our landscape, and Indians across the board have embraced entrepreneurship with enthusiasm and spirit, finding new ways to find answers to old questions. In fact, I think the mushroom theory of management used to be, you put your employee in a dark corner, heap a lot of manure on him, and he will grow into a mushroom. But here you have the mushroom coming out of this very pristine box. I think it shakes up even some of those metaphors. But the tradition of Indian entrepreneurship is not a new one. I think one can argue that Indians have already been proving themselves for many years in the number of places they've helmed, in places like Silicon Valley, where so many startups have been. I think 40% of all the startups in Silicon Valley have had an Indian associated with the founding of the company. I know Bangalore is more Silicon Plateau perhaps, but there's a place near Mumbai called Powai Valley for the increasing number of startups located there. All these have gone to change our outlook on the world, but the manner in which there is now a proliferation of startups within the country has led to predictions that by 2020, even the government estimates that there will be 11,000 functioning startups in India. Now this tells a much larger story, because those of you here, perhaps Mr. Sharma is one of them, who are children of an earlier era, will not recognize this kind of transformation, and you, the youngsters, will not know about the India that we experienced when we were growing up. I mean, the options that you face today are truly countless. I remember after my days in college, how few were the options available to graduating youngsters in India in the late 60s or early 70s. There are more subjects you can study, of course. Courses are available that didn't exist in those days. There are far more jobs, career options, technologies, innovative ideas, and here's an example we've just seen. And of course, there is support for entrepreneurship as well. What a big contrast from the days when our economy was still a very closed, socialist, protectionist one, and international exposure was limited. The word globalization hadn't been coined. Today, the world is much smaller. Opportunities are far greater, and all of you, I think, have far greater choices facing you in India and outside that were unknown to previous generations. India's economy, of course, has transformed itself dramatically since the liberalization of 1991, when Dr. Manmohan Singh, then finance minister, stood up in the Lok Sabha and declared that no power on earth could stop an idea whose time had come. The idea, of course, was the liberalization of the Indian economy, and that's given us the growth, the economic diversity that has enabled us to weather the storms which have confronted the global economy from 2008 onwards. Last year, in 2015, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, predicted that despite all that's happening here and around the globe, the Indian economy will be the fastest growing major economy in the world. A few years ago, we overtook Japan to become the third largest economy in the world in purchasing power parity or PPP terms. But in many ways, the best is yet to come, because we have you young entrepreneurs on our side. And age is on India's side. You are the future builders of our country, and we are the youngest major economy in the world. At a time when many of our potential competitors, China, Japan, South Korea, are facing a serious demographic squeeze. And of course, the rest of the world is aging. In Europe, the average age is going to be 46 by 2020. In Japan, it's going to be 47. In America, even youthful immigrant-fueled America, it is going to be over 40. In India, in the same 2020, our average age will be 29. So we have this huge young population, 50.1% under 25, 65% under 35, a young country, and you, as young entrepreneurs, will be joining a dynamic, competitive, productive, youthful workforce which could be the engine of the world, taking over that distinction which is today enjoyed by China. In fact, the International Labour Organization has predicted, the ILO, that by 2020 we will have in India 116 million workers in the job starting age group of 20 to 24, whereas China will only have 94 million. These numbers suggest that we could have the labour force that could transform the world, and our situation would compare very well with the industrialized world because its labour force is going down by 4% by that time, by 2020. China's will go down by 5%, but India's will increase by 32%. So as far as the age structure and potential is concerned, we have a huge competitive advantage, and this is the time for us to seize that advantage. And that's where you all come in. Except for one thing, that demographic dividend that I'm talking about will only work in our favor if we can educate and train our young people to seize the opportunities available to them in the 21st century. Opportunities that entrepreneurs like you would be creating. Those of you who are here, obviously, for you the world is already your oyster. You're getting exposed to ideas of entrepreneurship. You're going to go out, start your businesses. One day you will employ people. But for everyone else in the country who's less fortunate, less privileged, less initiative driven, the question marks abound. Our demographic dividend could become a demographic disaster if we continue to produce legions of uneducated or undereducated, unemployed, and therefore unemployable also, very frustrated young men. And I say young men because we've had, as you know, Maoist incidents in 165 of our 625 districts. And these are all run by young men who, because they have no jobs, no stake in our society, no interest in actually attempting to get a productive future in this country, they're the ones who are seduced by 1,000 rupees and a Kalashnikov. We are the ones to blame because we haven't equipped them to be part of it. But this is where you all come in. Harnessing young India's potential and bringing about the social and economic transformation we all hope for will require highly educated and motivated individuals to provide leadership across all sectors of the economy. It's because of this that India's burgeoning entrepreneurial ambitions remain a significant weapon in our national arsenal as we march towards a better economic future. While we celebrate those who created brand India by building, for example, phenomenal business empires, the fact is that our chances have been strengthened by the fact of the proliferation in recent years of small and medium-level entrepreneurial ventures. Some will succeed and a number will fail. But the point is that they will energize our economic spaces and throw up the best available minds and talents to lead the country and to lead the economy. We will create an ecosystem of entrepreneurial effort, and the federal bank's efforts are very much a part of that ecosystem that is evolving, that supports entrepreneurs and gives them a platform, a springboard. And of course, the right mindset is often also half the battle won in finding the right solution. Now, looking at all of you entrepreneurs, I'm quite confident that we will be able to find answers to the problems faced by India and the world at large. In 69 years of our independence as a nation, we've often found creative solutions to our problems. I feel immense pride when I recall how far we have come, how the skills of our citizens and our leaders have allowed us to grow so much since 1947, when the British left us with a legacy of less than 0.01% annual growth in the preceding 47 years. 17% literacy. In fact, the entire country not only had 70% literacy, women were down at 8%. So only 1 out of every 12.5 women in India could read and write. We had a life expectancy of 27. That is, the average Indian lived only up to the age of 27. And 90% of our population lived below the poverty line. So we've come a long way since 1947, and we can truly be proud of it as we head to the 70th anniversary of our independence. But we need to count upon the inherent creativity and spirit of enterprise that each of you has if we are to overcome the challenges that still remain in the new century. I mean, of course, conferences like this will help you to understand and mold the way India works, how its pulse beats. But you know, the rest of the world is sitting up and looking at us. Case studies like the Dabbawalas of Mumbai or Sulabh International or even Lalu Prasad Yadav's railway reforms are being studied in places like the Harvard Business School. They've been introduced in the curricula of various institutions of higher education. So it's important to remember that we in India can learn a lot from how indigenous business management practices have worked. In 2011, I was invited to inaugurate the India Innovation Centre, being set up then by the University of Toronto. Can you imagine a Canadian university was studying Indian innovation? And the buzzword in those days was Indovation. Of course, it was partly to do with our Indian principle of jugaad, of getting things done, which is getting institutionalized and studied. Not, I think, as the critics tend to say, merely as a system of twisting things around, ways to go around the system and to cut corners. And I agree that kind of jugaad is not good enough, because it's about simply making do, whereas we should be striving for genuine excellence. But I think jugaad is actually much more than that. It's about new ways of thinking out of the box, repurposing things to make do with what you've got within your resource constraints, and to create solutions creatively and more important, in a non-traditional way to traditional issues. I must say, I said thinking out of the box, but here you have mushrooms coming out of the box. What a wonderful thing. And what was particularly striking about what Mr. Kevin was saying to me on the stage was he's proud of the fact that at his present volume of production, an individual farmer associated with his venture is earning 50 to 60,000 guaranteed net income a month. Now, for a farmer in rural Karnataka, that is serious money. And that, I think, is the social benefit of entrepreneurship. He's not a charitable organization, he's a business. But in the process of running his business, he is also helping transform Indian agriculture, literally out of the box. And I must say that I find this a very, very exciting example. I'll be talking about it elsewhere as well, because to my mind, it's a striking example of what we need to see happening much more in our economy. But what are the other kinds of innovation we can talk about? An Indian villager, for example, constructs a makeshift vehicle to transport his livestock and goods by rigging a wooden cart, a bit of a bullock cart, with an irrigation hand pump to serve as an engine. Now that's the kind of jugaad we're all used to, right? But also common machines and household objects are reincarnated in ways that their original manufacturers never intended. Everything is reusable or reimagined. And then, of course, we have such clever Indian solutions, truly entrepreneurial solutions to problems that other countries didn't realize were a problem. For example, in India, we are the land that invented the notion of the missed call, right? If you are a student at university and you want to call your parents, but you can't afford to have that call come on your bill because your pocket money is very limited, what do? You give them one ring, they see that one ring on their phone and they call you back, right? Now, no one in the world had thought of that till some Indians dreamt it up. But the fact is that that this is a way of finding a different solution. I mean, the people who invented the phone, the screen, the ringer, didn't realize it could be repurposed in this way, but Indians did. Instead of complicating or refining products, I think Indian innovators have learned how to get the essentials out of every product, strip them down to the bare essentials in order to make them affordable, accessible, durable in our conditions, and effective. So I'll give you a few examples, because this is a after all, a seminar on entrepreneurship. What has Indian entrepreneurial ingenuity been able to come up with that's truly of a world-beating quality? And I would tell you, though this may not be a popular example with everybody, that none is probably more impressive than the Tata Nano. Because at $2,000, it costs roughly the same as a high-end DVD player on a Western luxury car. Of course, there's no DVD player in a Nano, and no radio either in the basic model. But its innovations have garnered 34 patents. And they're not merely the result of doing away with frills, which they've done away with, so no power brakes, no air conditioning, no side view mirrors even. They've reduced the use of steel, for example, by inventing an aluminium engine. They've increased space by moving the wheels to the edge of the chassis. They've relied on a modular design that enables a car to be assembled from kits. And all of this has proved conclusively that you can do more with less. To my mind, that is the classic Indian jugaad at work in a modern manufacturing setting. Similarly, let's take another high-tech enterprise, even higher tech than the Nano. The mission to Mars, Mangalyaan. It cost us $74 million, which was less than the budget of the Hollywood space movie Gravity. And it was 11% of the cost that NASA incurred for its own latest Mars program, which clocks in at $671 million. Oh, the other examples, the TMAC 400, a handheld electrocardiogram that costs roughly $800, slightly less, I think, with the exchange rate going down. The cheapest alternative on the international market will cost $2,000. So that's more than halving the international price for an electrocardiogram. The Tata Swatch, at $24 for a water purifier, it's 10 times cheaper than its nearest competitor. That cardiogram I told you about, it uses just 4 buttons, okay, rather than the usual dozen in the other cardiogram machines. There's a tiny portable printer, like the ones you see your waiter bringing you in some restaurants these days, which makes the whole thing small enough to fit into a knapsack or a satchel and even run on batteries. It has reduced the cost of an ECG, an electrocardiogram test, to under $1 per patient, making it affordable to very poor Indians. Think about how many Indians have died of heart disease in the past because they couldn't even afford to get themselves diagnosed, let alone treated. Similarly, if you take the Swatch, it uses rice husks, which, as you know, is a very common waste product in our paddy fields, to purify water. Now, given that 5 million Indians are dying of cardiovascular diseases every year, and more than a quarter of them are under 65, about 2 million Indians a year die from drinking contaminated water, these innovations have proved nothing less than groundbreaking. There are many other examples of proven innovation already in the Indian market. The low-cost fuel-efficient mini-truck, an expensive mini-tractor being sold profitably in the United States, a battery-powered refrigerator, a $100 electricity inverter, and a solar lamp that clocks in at $12. Medical innovations, of course, are particularly widespread, and Bangalore has been in many ways a center of biotech innovation. An Indian company has invented a cheaper hepatitis B vaccine. The price used to be $15 per injection for hepatitis B vaccine. Today, thanks to this Indian company, it's 0.10 cents. Insulin's price has fallen by 40%. A company based here in Bangalore has created a diagnostic tool to test for tuberculosis and infectious diseases that costs $200 compared to $10,000 for similar equipment in the West. But the interesting thing is that these are all solutions to Indian problems, as I mentioned with cardiovascular disease or contaminated water, and as I mentioned in praising what this company is doing for Indian farmers. I had a very interesting conversation with Professor Mashetkar, who I'm sure most of you have heard of, who has, in his retirement, decided to honor entrepreneurial innovation by giving an annual prize, I think, named after his mother. And this prize is for the most relevant innovation that truly solves a genuine Indian problem. The first year he's given the prize, before I explain what the winner is, let me tell you what the problem is. You know that in our country there were 15 million people who are blind. In most cases, the blindness would have been preventable if only they had early enough eye tests for advancing glaucoma and other problems, solve them by relatively simple treatment, eye operations which can be done free in eye camps for poor people. But what happens, many of the victims are people who are, for example, daily wage laborers. And to do these eye tests, you need to dilate your eyes. And when you dilate your eyes for several hours afterwards, you see fuzzily. You can't really see in the normal way. Now these daily wage laborers, that means losing one day's wages essentially if they do that eye test. So they don't go for the eye test. So the innovator of Mashelkar Honor was somebody who came up with an eye test for glaucoma and other kinds of degenerative eye disease that did not require the eyes to be dilated. So that a poor person could come and take the test very cheaply and did not lose his entire day's work. He could go back to work immediately. Now this kind of innovation is what I'm talking about. You come up with creative ideas and link it to real problems in our society. And that integrative process is something that you can all take advantage of, because India, having been once a very protected economy, is now a tremendously plugged in economy into the global economic system. At the same time, we know that we've seen from the recent American election campaign that economic and social dislocations can also result, that concerns arise about job security, the distribution of economic gains, resentment of immigrants, foreigners, and so on. And the challenge is that here in India, there's also the political argument often being made that all these economic reforms, the burst of entrepreneurship is simply making the rich richer and the poor poorer. I believe that is not true. I don't even think statistically it is true, because statistically we pulled more people out of poverty in the last 10 or 15 years than we've done in the preceding 45 or 50 years. So I would argue the poor are not getting poorer, but it's true the rich are getting richer. And many of you in this room, the not yet rich, will become rich. But in the process, we do need to ensure that the poor are uplifted, because after all, the magic of the market will not appeal to people who cannot afford to enter the marketplace. And the truth is that if we don't extend these benefits of this entrepreneurial revolution to the Indian poor by supporting growth, by distributing the fruits of that growth to those who've been excluded or marginalized, we will all as a society face serious problems. You know that the assets of the 200 richest people in the world are more than the combined income of 41% of the world's population. And that's a huge imbalance to correct. So in India, whether we grow at 9% as we once did, or at 7% as we're doing now, or even at 5 or 6% as we slipped to briefly a little while ago, the fact is we can't forget that the focus of our development must ultimately still be on the bottom 25% of our population. And that's why in urging all of you as entrepreneurs to think not only about your bottom line, but about the bottom line of the ordinary people of our country. I hope I'm not preaching too much, but that social responsibility is part of what makes us as a country and as a society special and distinctive. I have had the pleasure as an MP of interacting with many young people, potential future leaders of India. I've been impressed by their enthusiasm, their enterprise, the idealism that they've shown in dealing with the problems of our country. And that's why I hope that you will. Many of you entrepreneurs here will, in fact, participate in identifying solutions across the board to our long-standing national problems. These are problems that haven't changed in decades. We've still not solved the problems of providing our Aam Aadmi with roti, kapda or makan. And now it's graduated to bijli, sadak and pani, as you know, for those of you who followed Bihar politics. And one can probably add kitab, naukri and perhaps tomorrow broadband as well to the wish list that every ordinary Indian must have. So we need to find innovative ways to tackle all of these needs and solve them. You can do it. You know, as I said earlier, Abhilash's point about failure is a very important one, because many of you, your first-time entrepreneurs, may have to encounter failure. Don't take it to heart. I think setbacks are a part of life. We've all had them. I don't think there's any truly successful person in our country or anywhere in the world who hasn't had setbacks along the way. Maybe they've been good at concealing them, but they've had them. You don't get to the top without having setbacks along the way. But the setbacks should not extinguish you. They should ignite you into a greater purpose. I am often inspired by the story from the 1890s of how the great industrialist to be, Jamshedji Tata, was denied admission to a hotel in Bombay. I think it was Watson's Hotel. Although it was Speach Hotel anyway, but there are various names that have been attributed to it. And he was denied admission because the hotel had a sign outside saying, Indians and dogs not allowed. So what did Tata do? Instead of going out in humiliation, he went out and created a far better, grander, more opulent hotel, the Taj Mahal. And of course, that was the main thing about that hotel. The Indians were allowed. I don't know about the dogs. I should have found out. But Indians were allowed, and of course, the Taj is now considered one of the finest hotels in the world, whereas Watson's or Pike's or whatever it was is long since closed. And similarly, when Mr. Tata set up the first ever Indian steel mill in 1905 in the teeth of implacable British hostility, he actually encountered a colonial official of that era who sneered that he would personally eat every ounce of steel that an Indian was capable of producing. Well, I'm sorry he didn't live long enough to see the day when the descendants of Mr. Tata would buy up the remnants of British steel by acquiring Chorus. And now, of course, they're trying to sell it as well. So I give him a bad case of indigestion. And maybe some of you will remember the internet meme that went around last summer after the last elections in Britain, when the now former but then newly re-elected Prime Minister David Cameron went to Buckingham Palace to claim his renewed mandate. As these Indian WhatsApp messages said, he went in an Indian car, a Jaguar, escorted by police in another Indian car, a Land Rover. I mean, that's enough to send a post-colonial frisson through us. But my point is not just about Indian entrepreneurship conquering foreign countries. It's also that it's time to set aside the old stereotypes of who can and cannot do what in the globalizing world of today, who cannot excel and who can excel. In this new world, we need entrepreneurs who can lead, who can innovate, who can inspire, who can reach out beyond the limits that their forerunners had to live with. Our country needs a countrywide commitment to quality that can work across all of these areas, and I'm counting on all of you to adhere to standards of quality, to promote effective implementation, and to make sure we you improve as you go along. I think today's seminar ought to be seen by all of you as an important beginning. As you embark into the world to display your talent and intelligence and set up what I hope will be successful new ventures, I can say with confidence that as motivated and mature individuals, you will make exceptional contributions to the vast pool of knowledge and wealth in our country and in the world. And as future leaders, future business leaders of India, you will carry, I hope, the weight of the countless, nameless, faceless citizens of India who rely on your skill, your dedication, and your acquired talent to help them build a better tomorrow. Now, it would be odd for an Indian politician to end the speech without quoting Mahatma Gandhi. So let me live up to your expectations and do so. But I won't give you one of his better-known quotes. Gandhiji actually said, "It is the quality of our work that will please God and not the quantity." He, of course, also more famously declared, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." So since quality will not come without change, I think both his exhortations apply to all the entrepreneurs in this room. Change yourselves to change the world, and do so with work and values of the highest quality. I'm sure that as you launch the many enterprises that are germinating in your minds at the end of today's seminar, that these two thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi can illuminate your quest for continued accomplishment in all aspects of your life and work. Congratulations on today's discussions. Good luck. All the best. Jai Hind.